Melissa.
And this is
the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast.
This is Kevin with the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast. Tonight, I have Teddy C. It's currently 9:20 p.m. I have Teddy C., a very good friend of mine from my home group, sobriety date 12/30/15. Teddy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Tired.
I know it's late. I actually prefer these late shows to the morning ones. For some reason, like I can't get my brain going as well. And at night I'm tired, but my brain still, miraculously works a little better.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask, you're a Tillamook boy.
Yes.
Yes. Born and raised in Tillamook.
I'm a Tillabilly.
And for those of you that don't know where Tillamook is, it's a coastal town. It's known for the Tillamook cheese baby loaf, right? And
yes.
Maybe some salmon fishing. Why don't you tell me a little bit about Tillamook?
Well, Tillamook, they say it's the land of trees, cheese, and cow shit breeze. So that's pretty much the gist of it. It's a small town, under 10,000.
Yep.
Coast of Oregon.
Coastal town full of coasties and
Rains 9 months out of the year.
Rains a lot, which brings the fish in.
Yeah.
And it's a cool town. I've spent a lot of time down there. We had a beach house in Rockaway. I did some meetings down there while I was still using in Rockaway. There's a silly bunch down there getting sober too.
That's where my rock bottom was.
Oh man. So Teddy, why don't you start us off, talk about childhood, or maybe the first time you drank or used?
During my childhood, my mom and dad drank. I come from a family, my mom, my dad, my parents lost my sister. She would have been the oldest. They lost her at a week old. My brother, he was 2.5 years older than me. And, my parents drank and it was normal around the house, and they smoked pot. And that was normal, and I thought it was normal until I got older, So, growing up, me and my brother hanging out in the neighborhood, doing normal stuff. Being good kids, really. Hyper, but good. And, it all changed, I would say, when I got in a wreck with my best friend on April 18th, 1994. I was 16. I had just gotten my license and insurance, and I was able to drive by myself, and it was the first time I drove without an adult in the car. And we're going up to watch helicopter logging, and my buddy Ryan, his dad was part of the logging crew up there, so we were going to watch him. And when we got up to the 4.5 mile marker up the Trask River in Tillamook, going too fast, I rolled my truck and I paralyzed it from the neck down. So that began my guilt and shame, because when I went back to school, everybody was like, look what the fuck you did. Nobody asked me how I was doing. And it sounds selfish, but that's what I needed, was someone to say, how are you doing? And alcohol was available at my house, and it was normal. My parents would rather have us drink at home than be out on the streets causing trouble. So I'd invite friends over and drink, and I went to counseling for, I'd say, about 9 months. And my parents just kept telling me it was an accident. They never actually asked me how I was feeling inside. And I felt terrible, because I knew it was an accident. I did not mean to do it, but I was the one driving, and I felt responsible. I was 16 years old. There was no way in hell that I would go out and do this on purpose.
And you were completely sober at the time.
Absolutely. So the the cops came over. They charged me with assault 1 and reckless driving, which carried a sentence of me going to McLaren until I was 25 years old. You know, I'd go up until I was 18, and then I'd go to prison, adult prison, until I was 25. And the DA in Tillamook, Nancy Norlander, awesome lady. I have nothing but respect for this lady. She looked at me and she said, "This was your first time driving. There is no way I'm going to throw your life away." And it still gets me emotional today because that could have sent me down a whole nother path, you know, and God is in my life. Like, I didn't realize it at the time. Like, God was present saying, "No, don't do this." And so they dropped it down to a careless driving, and I paid the fine, did all that. But that's when I started using. Like, I started using multiple drugs and drinking a lot, you know, because I felt like shit inside. You know, I just didn't want to feel like shit. So I just drank. And when I was 18, I moved out. I graduated high school, moved out, started building still buildings out in the valley, and I got introduced to some really heavy drugs by the guys that I was working with. And it was normal. You know, I wanted to fit in, so I started doing them too. And with myself, I am 100% in what I'm doing at that time. It doesn't matter if it's drugs, alcohol, work, family, whatever. You know, it's I'm everything or nothing kind of guy. So, you know, going through the construction field, you know, it's there's a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs. So I thought it would be a brilliant idea to get out of Tillamook. Me and my buddy Josh were like, "Hey, let's go to Vegas." Because my brother had moved to Vegas when he was 18. And I really looked up to my brother. You know, I think every younger brother looks up to his older brother, even though he beat the shit out of me every day, you know. But I love my brother, and I looked up to him, and I was like, "Let's go to Vegas." And our bright idea was like, "Oh, let's go camping in Vegas. We'll save money." There is no camping in Vegas. Just FYI, to anybody who wants to think about going camping in Vegas, there is no camping. But we were down there, and my buddy left after a week, and I stayed down there because I'm stubborn. I was like, "I'm staying down here. I can make this. I can do this on my own."
Where'd you guys camp?
We ended up getting off the Greyhound and it's right next to the Plaza Motel. So we checked into the Plaza on the 14th floor for $32 a night. It was awesome. We didn't stay there long because it was too expensive.
Yeah.
I ended up moving over to the Budget Inn, which was a little bit cheaper. You know.
Probably a lot nicer too, huh?
Oh, it was great. You know, that's where I think I was the only white guy in there. You know, there's a lot of prostitutes and, you know, they're pimps, and they called me Whitey. You know, you had to have a key to get into the barricaded fence to go to your room. And I was okay with that for about 9 months. And then I came home. Then about 6 months later, I was like, "Hey, let's go to Florida." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Well, if I get you over to Florida, it's going to take you a hell of a lot longer to get back to Tillamook. You know, you can't bail this time." So we went to Florida on a Greyhound. Not recommended. That was 88 hours of hell. And it was fun, actually. I had fun, but it was time for a shower when I got there, for sure. And we were down in Florida, and, you know, I got introduced to, what were they called? Mind erasers. And we drank those, and they live up to their name. That's when blacking out became a daily thing down there.
So a mind eraser is like a cocktail sort of drink, or what? Like a hard seltzer? What is it?
It is about 75% vodka, about 5% amaretto, and the rest is Sprite, and you stick your straw into the bottom and you chug it, and it tastes like chocolate milk.
That's weird.
It was fabulous. It was good. Like, I want some chocolate milk right now. But yeah, it was, so we partied down there quite a bit, doing a lot of ecstasy. Cocaine was really good down there, and there was a lot of it. I was in the restaurant industry, and that's what we did. We drank, did cocaine, and did a lot of ecstasy, and it was fun. This is back when it was fun. This was my fun stage, like going through stages of my disease, and it was fun down there. I had a great time, and finally the money ran dry. So I know construction, so our landlord was like, "Hey, my nephew has a construction business out in Nebraska. Give him a call." So we gave him a call. That next day, we were on a Greyhound to Indianapolis, Indiana. So we get there, and I'm the oldest one on the crew, and I'm 23 years old. And the youngest guy was 21, and he was our foreman. And this is when my alcoholism, like, accelerated, like, really, really accelerated, because we were getting per diem, and it was good per diem back then, and we were making great money. Like, we didn't have to pay rent. Everything was paid for. I had a paycheck coming in. I was still broke every Friday. It's like, how am I broke? It's because you're blacking out every night and you're blowing your money, And I remember my buddy Josh going, "Teddy, what time is it?" And I'd hold my hand up, and I'd get the DTs, and my hand would shake. "Oh, it's about 2:00. I'd look at our watch. Didn't have cell phone back then. I didn't want that expense on my, It's about 2:00. Then a couple hours go by. "What time is it?" And I'm like shaking really bad. And I'm like, "It's time to go. Like, we got to hit happy hour," because we had free booze and free food for an hour at our motel. And, it was time to go. We'd stay at the hotel, get pre-funk, go out to the bars, go out to the strip clubs, and do what normal, well, I wouldn't say normal, but construction guy out of town stuff, and, that job lasted for a couple years, and I finally ended up quitting. I was tired of living in a motel, so I moved back to Tillamook. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So around, 2008, I moved to Bend, and that's when I got really heavy into meth, like super heavy into it. And that led me to homelessness and just a lifestyle that I don't wish on anybody. It was just terrible. And I remember living at my goddaughter's house, and my buddy Brandon, he's like, "Teddy, you gots to go." And we joke about this now, but he took me to a homeless shelter, and he goes, "Teddy," this was years later, he goes, "Teddy, it was like taking my dog to get put down." He goes, "It's a terrible feeling, but you had to go, you just had to go." So, that felt horrible, but it just kept going because I didn't want to feel those emotions. I didn't want to feel my feelings. I just wanted to get loaded. And by this time, I'm just like, I'm going to die from a drug overdose, getting murdered, or alcoholism. That's how it's going to be. This is what God's, that's the hand I was dealt. So I was still working in Bend, and I went to a class reunion, and we took a picture, and I didn't have a date. Weird, the homeless, not really homeless at that time. At that point, I had a job. I was doing okay. I was still drinking, smoking pot, doing pills, but I was doing okay. And I could keep a little bit of money in my pocket. And we went to this class reunion, and we took a picture with my buddies, and I was the only one without a date, and I made a frowny face. looking all sad as a joke. I was having a good time with my buddies, and I get this Facebook Messenger notification. I'm like, who's this broad? I look, and she's like, why the sad face? I ignored it, and about a month goes by. Hey, how you doing? Well, I'd just broken up with somebody, and I was like, ooh, I'll hit this one up, why not? And I'll probably get punched in the face when I get home for this one, but it's my current future bride, because we're getting married in October. But it was Jacqueline, and I move really fast in relationships. I was like, me and her like clicked. We were like, okay, cool. We met up at the Timeout Tavern in Tillamook, and we went up and met, and I was getting some marijuana to sell back in Bend from my buddy. Had a really good pot, and I wasn't drinking at the time. I was like, I'm not drinking anymore. I can't drink anymore. So and we meet at the bar, and she's pounding shots. Should have been a red flag, but it wasn't. I was like, she's hot, so let's do this thing. I ended up moving back to the coast to Rockaway, and I moved in with her dad because she was living with her dad. Should have been another red flag, but blinders on. I'm in love. So we get our own place, and we're like, it wasn't a smart choice at all. We got our first place together, and it was literally next door to the liquor store. And I'll rewind just a little bit. It was her birthday. We went out to McMenamin's Edgefield, and we got a place and for the night, and she's like, oh, let's just have a good time. And, she's like, hey, can you go grab me a Ruby from the bar? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'm not drinking. I'm good, and go up to the bar, and he's pouring that thing. And I'm like, fuck, that looks good. And I was like, make that two. And it was on. I didn't stop drinking until I went to rehab, 4 years later. And, we ended up moving away from the liquor store about a mile. And our thinking was, that'll slow us down if we move away from the liquor store. No, it just accelerated it because we lived a block from her dad next to the liquor store. Now we're a mile away. We can do what we want. Like, he can't just walk over to our house, he's got to drive up there, and he drinks a little bit too. And, it was like, that's just when it accelerated, and it got nasty quick, there's some stuff that I am not proud of. I've done a lot of work around it. There was domestic violence in the house. I went to jail for that. I did classes for that. And it was bad. Alcohol took me to that place that I never thought I would be. Abusive, angry, like, I don't know what it was, but there was something one time, like, I went from the happy-go-lucky drunk to the angry, like, instantly. Like, I'd be okay, and then I'd just get angry. And that led to domestic violence. And, it led to her parents not wanting me, her dad and stepmom not wanting me around. I had a restraining order, court-ordered restraining order, no contact order with Jacqueline, and I'd still go up and see her. I was staying at a buddy's house about 5 blocks away from where we lived, and I would go up there at night and hang out for a little bit, and then I'd go back to my buddy's house. And, it was Christmas of, 2015. I decided I wanted to go to rehab because I woke up in the ditch and blacked out. I woke up in the ditch and I was like, where in the hell am I? And I look around and I'm in the ditch about 2 blocks from our house. And I had this moment now I see it as a moment of clarity. I'm like, I need to do something, either kill myself or I need to find something, some help, via jail, prison, something to get me out of society. Like, I need something to remove me from society because I'm going to end up killing somebody or myself. And, we went up. Jacqueline's like, let's find you a rehab. And I'm like, okay. So I start calling these rehabs and they're like, hey, do you have insurance? And I was like, no. They're like, well, we can't help you. I'm like, cool. Well, I guess they, not going to get help. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I came across the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center out in Portland. So I called them, and Haven Jones is the intake guy. And he's like, Teddy, be here tomorrow. I'm like, whoa. No, like, not tomorrow. I can't do that tomorrow. Christmas is coming up. New Year's is coming up. Those are, important to me. He's like, well, if you want to save your life, you'll come. And I'm like, well, let's do the 23rd of December. And then Jacqueline's like, well, I'd really like you around for Christmas. And that was the worst fucking Christmas I ever had. I was with Jacqueline, but I wasn't allowed at her parents. I wasn't allowed, I wasn't even, pretty much I was kicked out of our house. I'd been couch surfing, homeless, I'll just call it, around Rockaway, and, it was, so I stayed for Christmas, and then I was supposed to go the 27th, and I didn't go. Then I was like, finally, if I do not go before New Year's, I am done for. Like, I'm dead. Like, I'm going to kill myself or somebody else. I need to do something now. So I went the 29th of December. I went with my mom, my brother, and Jacqueline. And it comes back to the story in Bend where they're taking me to the pound, going to drop me off. There's a couple of those. But
for the second time now.
Yeah, but different people, should have been a indicator to me. But I get in there and Haven's like, oh, you made it finally. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here. Like, what do we got to do? And I went in there with, Jacqueline bought me Christmas presents, some nice clothes, and I wore those clothes to the Salvation Army. And I get in there and he's like, hey, this is a 6-month program. And I'm like, whoa, like, that's a long time. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And he's like, well, your ride just left. You can go hop the Max and hitchhike back to Tillamook, or you can stay here. And I'm like, let's try this out. So I stayed for a little bit. And yeah, 6-month program of the Salvation Army, I went the 29th of December. That is not my clean date. My clean date is December 30th because me and my brother smoked about a 1/4 ounce of pot on the way from Tillamook to the rehab because that was the only thing that they would allow you to be dirty for because it takes so long to get out of your system. And I'm like, well, fuck it. This is my last hurrah. And going in there, I had no idea what I was doing. I just didn't want to be sick anymore. I didn't want to shake. I didn't want to be angry. I just wanted to not be sick, and by going in there and they didn't let me leave the premises for 30 days. That was you're a red rope when you got in there and you had to just stay for 30 days, not go off premises. There was no cell phones. There was no drugs, like no psych meds, nothing. They didn't allow anything in there except for like heart medication and stuff. And, they breathalyzed you when you got in there, when you left when you went outside the dorm and came back, Because what we did was worked in the warehouse to pay for a rehab. That's how I paid for my rehab, was working it for the Salvation Army for 44 hours a week to pay for my room and board, my food, and the amount of like classes they put us through. I mean, we were busy in there. And a lot of people called it the Salvation Army. And I don't see it that way. I did back then, like early on, but now I am so grateful for that program, because you had to have your shirt tucked in. You had to have a collared shirt, a polo shirt, which was given to you. When I got in there, Haven Jones goes, "Okay, strip down. You got to donate your clothes." And I'm like, "Dude, I just got these clothes for Christmas. These are brand new." And he's like, "We're going to strip you down and build you back up." And I'm like, "You son of a bitch."
That's
like,
great.
I'm like, and they stripped me down naked.
Wow.
And that made me feel like a piece of shit, like worthless. And I know the reason why they do it now, because I know what it did to me later on down the road.
Squash the ego.
You know,
Yep.
And you had to shave your head, or it was a number 2. Everybody in there, number 2. That was the first, you know, you got issued clothes. So putting on another man's underwear, another man's socks, another man's shirt, another man's pants, and then go and get your haircut. That way everybody looks the same, you know, and it was like military. It was. And because we had to make our beds, and they had to be like hospital corners. If there was a wrinkle in your bed, you got written up. If it wasn't made right, it was written up. You couldn't have books on your nightstand, written up. I mean, no cussing, no, you had to be shaved, like no 5 o'clock shadow at all. There's the house manager, Charles, love that guy now. I hated him back then. He would come up and he would get 2 inches from your face. "Mr. Carr, you didn't shave." I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "Well, your hair grows really fast because it's 5:05 and you shaved 5 minutes ago and you got a 1/16 of an inch on you need to go back and shave." "Yes, sir." That's all I just, yes, sir, yes, sir. I didn't want to get in trouble. I just wanted to get through this program to get out and be okay, you know. And while doing all this stuff, it was training me to become a productive member of society. And I didn't see it back then, but now I do. You know, it was like, you're going to tell me when to wake up, when to go to work, when to brush my teeth, when to shave, how to act like a normal human being, you know, a respectable human being. And this stuff has like transpired into my recovery for sure because of that program. You know, I don't make my bed. I don't shave every day. I don't tuck my shirt in very, very rarely, you know, like when I go out to a nice dinner or something to impress the in-laws or something, you know. But yeah, it got ingrained in me that if you want to make it in recovery, you better go to meetings. You better talk to newcomers. You better make sure that they are comfortable, because if they feel uncomfortable, they are going to bounce. And I saw so many people in the Salvation Army come in for a week and gone because they're like, "No, I can't handle this," you know? And, you know, if you dive in to your recovery like you did your addiction, you'll be okay. You know, it's real easy to like, I feel worthless half the time because I see all the work that Jacqueline does for her mental health, her recovery, our kids, our family, you know. She's a stay-at-home mom, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, it must be nice." And I'm like, you have no idea what it's like. But I'll rewind again. June 7th. Well, before that. So the first day I got let out of off premises, that weekend, Jacqueline came out and saw me. And she had still not gotten sober. So in February, she was able to see me. And she came out, and we went to the Target parking lot. I could still go to that parking lot at Cascade Station parking lot out by the airport. And I could tell you what parking spot we parked in. And we had sex. The whole time in our addiction, we didn't use protection whatsoever at all. And the first time sober, I get her pregnant. You know, they weren't drunk, passed out in the corner. They knew what to do this time. You know, they're like, oh, I'm sober. I can do this. You know, I can swim straight. I'm not swerving everywhere. So I get her pregnant. So dealing with early sobriety, I got a kid on the way. I'm like, fuck, dude. Like, I just have to, you know, kick this into gear, you know. And Jacqueline got sober on February 20th of 2016. She was 5 days sober when she found out she was pregnant. So on June 7th, I get a phone call, and we'd had some complications throughout the pregnancy, spot bleeding, stuff like that. And, you know, it's stressful. First kid. And especially not being there for her. You know, I'm in inpatient rehab, and I'm calling her every night, seeing how everything's going. And she calls me, and I was working the front desk, and you're not supposed to answer the phone from people that you know. And looking back, I know it was God saying, hey, you need to take this phone call. And I answered the phone, and she's like, hey, I just gave birth, and he did not make it. So I'm like 5 months sober. She's, you know, 3.5 months sober, and we lose a baby at birth. You know, she delivered the baby, and, you know, I was heartbroken. You know, I was like, fuck this. You know, I just want to go be with Jacqueline. So I talked to Lieutenant Dave, and I was like, hey, dude, I think I'm going to leave. I told him what was going on. I think I'm going to leave. And he's like, check it out, Teddy. The second you leave this door, we're calling the cops because you're on probation, and you will be looking over your shoulder the rest of the time until they catch you. Is that what you want? He goes, you're no good to her if you leave right now. He goes, you can take that, or you can't. Go back to your room, sleep on it. And I went back to my room. I thought about it. I prayed about it. And I called Jacqueline. I was like, hey, if I leave, like, they're calling the probation, Tillamook County probation. They're going to find me. I'm going to go to jail for I don't know how long. And what do you want me to do? And she's like, you need to stay. That one decision, like, could have changed my life forever. And so I stayed. And I graduated on June 29th. And, you know, my parents were there, and Jacqueline came out. We had dinner at Famous Dave's. You know, it was good. But the next day we went to Tillamook, and the first thing we did, we went to the funeral home and picked up our baby. He'd been cremated, so we went and picked up his ashes. I still have a hard time going by that place and not thinking about that day, that moment, you know, of like, man, like, this sucks. You know, it's hard losing a kid. But if you do the work around it, there's blessings out of every situation. I don't care how horrid it is, you know, because I've been able to help somebody else that has lost a child, you know, later in my recovery. And, you know, when I got out of rehab, it was like balls to the walls. I was like, I'm in this. I am going to stay sober, because I heard horror stories of people going back out and dying, you know, and that's exactly what I would do, because my pride and ego wouldn't let me back in. And so, you know, I got a job right away doing construction. And then I got a better job. You know, things just started falling into place. And it's weird. Like, you do the work, your life gets better. You know, started working with my sponsor, doing the steps. And I'm like, this is fucking awesome. Like, I'm doing this work and my life's getting better. Like, weird. Like, how is this possible? Like, I'm doing okay in life now, you know? And I had the mentality, I was like, I'm 38 years old and I have wasted so much time. I am on fire and I am going to work my ass off. And I remember telling Jacqueline when I was in rehab that I am going to pay you back for every penny that I stole from you supporting me. I'm going to one day buy us a house. And she'll tell you to this day, she's like, he's full of shit. Like, there's no way, you know? And, you know, I went from not being wanted at my house, pretty much homeless, to a homeowner in 4 years of recovery. And I don't say that to brag whatsoever, because if you put in the work, you will get stuff back. But you have to give back what you've gotten out of your recovery. You know, the 12-step programs that I went to, like, I was ingrained in service early on. Like, you are going to do service and you're going to do it all the time. And I did a lot of it. You know, I was, you know, going to area meetings. So area meetings, I was going to, you know, being a chairman, a treasurer, you know, in our area. I started sponsoring people, you know, just doing the deal. And, you know, we were down in Tillamook and, you know, I told Jacqueline, I was like, I'm tired of driving back and forth to Portland because I joined the union and the local 16 sheet metal union. And, you know, I love doing sheet metal. And I was like, well, this is my gig. This is my career. You know, I can make really good money doing this. And I can, you know, I can provide for my family. You know, as 6/13 of 17 is when my boy Connor was born. And then we had another one that we lost about 4 months in, you know, another miscarriage. And, you know, it's did a lot of work around that too. You know, it's and Jacqueline asked me, she's like, do you want to have another kid? And I was like, it's your mind and body. You know, can you handle another loss? You know, I was like, I'm okay with one, but I'd really like another, you know. And some days I'm like, fuck, why did I say that? But I love the hell out of my kids. I do. So we tried again. And on 8/12 of 19, we had little baby Cassius, you know, and they're not so little anymore.
And how far are they apart?
2 years, 2 months.
2 years, 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like me and my brother, you know. We were 2.5 years apart. And it's so crazy looking back at baby pictures. Like, Connor looks like my brother, Cassius looks like me, and my parents even say it's like raising you guys all over again, but we get to send them home, you know. And you know, and then there's another dark day in my early recovery. You know, 4 years, that's not that much. You know, you think 4 years is a long time, and then you're like, it goes by so fast. And so we were still living in Rockaway.
And how long have you been sober at this point?
About 4 years.
About 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right around, it was a little under 4. And, you know, as I get this text message and it says, I'm praying for you, from a guy that doesn't pray. Like, this guy just, I'd always tell him, you know, he was one of my ex-sponsees. I'd always tell him, pray about it. And, you know, I call him, I'm like, why are you telling me to pray? And he's like, well, I don't want to be the one to tell you, but your brother was stabbed last night and he did not make it. So the first thing I did was I knew the police chief in Rockaway, so I called him. I used to party with him a lot. So I called him. I called Charlie, and I was like, hey, how do I find out? You know, he's like, call the sheriff's office. So I called the sheriff's office. They're like, we can't confirm anything right now, but we'll be heading over to your parents' house. And right then, you know, I already knew he'd been, because there's good information. It spreads fast in Tillamook. Like, news spreads like wildfire. And, you know, so I called my parents, and I am so grateful today that I'm the one they got to tell them, you know, that Jeffrey passed away, you know, and Jacqueline was just a mess, you know, and I told her, I was like, I got to go to my parents, you know, you can meet me down there later. And so I took off from Rockaway and set the cruise control so I didn't get a speeding ticket. And, you know, it was, I don't know what, it's got to be God, you know, telling me, call your sponsor. So I picked up the phone. I called Joe O. Love that guy. You know, I just saw him last weekend. And I told him, I'm like,
Is Joe O a Coastie?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
All right. I haven't heard that name, so.
Yeah. He's been to the captain table once when he was doing some schooling out here. But I call him, I tell him what's going on, and he's like, I don't know what to tell you. I've never dealt with this. I was like, well, just listen, because I need to talk the whole way I go to, you know, to my parents. So I talked to him. I got there, you know, got to my parents, and, you know, I've never, ever seen my mom like that. You know, just the look in her eyes was, you could see like a part of her soul was gone. And all I could do was go up to her and hug her, you know, and my dad, you don't see him cry. And it's hard to talk about, you know, but, you know, it's, that's one thing I get to do in recovery is be there for people, you know, and, you know, through that, I was able, I don't need no tissues, don't enable me. You know, as, through that happening, you know, there's a bond between my parents, you know, that I had never felt before. You know, it was the first time that I've like seen my parents like show emotion, like, and that's one thing that bothers me with my parents kind of is that they don't show it. They don't show emotions. They've quit drinking, but they don't have a program. And, you know, that's the benefits of this program, that we get to work on our inner selves, you know, and become better members of society, you know, better parents, you know. My parents did a fabulous job. They did nothing wrong. You know, I'm the one who made those decisions back then. You know, nobody put that bottle to my lips, that needle to my arm, nothing. You know, that's my choices. And I'm accountable for that. You know, I take accountability for that today. You know, I used to blame it on the wreck with Ryan. You know, look at me, like, feel sorry for me. You know, that self-pity drove me into places that I never wanted to be. But, you know, it's, then we bought a house in Hillsboro, and because I told Jacqueline, I'm like, hey, you know, either I quit my job or we can move. You know, we were looking for houses over on the coast, and I finally told her, I was like, hey, can we look in Washington County? You know, we'll be close to work and still close to the beach. So we bought a house in Hillsboro, and, you know, it's been a blessing, you know. getting out of Tillamook, nothing wrong with Tillamook or Rockaway. It's just not the place for me right now. You know, moving out here to the Valley has just opened up so many opportunities. My kids go to a private Catholic school. They don't have that stuff in Tillamook. Like, they have one private school, a Christian school over there. You know, that's it. That's all they have. You know, there's so much more opportunities for my children out here. And that's what I was thinking. I was like telling Jacqueline, I was like, my dad was a logger. You know, he was never at my football games. He was never at my baseball games, you know, and I know why, because he was driving an hour and a half, 2 hours to work one way and back. You know, he wouldn't get home until like 6 o'clock at night, you know, and I go, I don't want to be that father. I want to be there for their stuff. And so I've been able to, you know, coach Connor's T-ball team. And then we just got done doing basketball. I got to coach Cassius's team, and then I got to coach Connor's team as well. You know, and that's what I get to do. And I figured out that I'm not the parent that can just sit on the sideline and watch somebody. I'm a sports freak, and I just cannot sit there and watch somebody else coach my kid. But at some point, I'm going to, you know. I think we're putting them in wrestling and I'm not a wrestling coach. I'm not that guy. I think we found a guy. So, yeah, it's just been, when I got out here, you know, it was the middle of the pandemic. You know, we're still doing Zoom meetings. So we're doing a bunch of meetings in Tillamook, Zoom, and we'd Zoom out here once in a while. And Chris S., we'll call him, introduced me to the captain's table. And I started going there, and I have found a home. And then I found another home too, which is called the Coyote Club, on Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. And those two meetings are my staple. Captain's table usually has about 40 to 50 guys, and the Coyote Club has anywhere from 60 to 90, you know. And I have found a network of people in those two meetings that I don't know what I would do without it. You know, it's, I was challenged about 5 years ago to text 3 people a day, and by a safety officer over at Intel when I was doing some work there, and he was in the program. And he's like, I just want you to text 3 people a day. He goes, I can't be one of them, though. I see you every day. So you text 3 people. Well, I'm all in or I'm nothing. You know, it's, I think I'm up to like 119 people a day now.
I was going to ask how many people are you texting? I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I get texts from you at 5 a.m. every morning. Usually, like, I usually get up between like 5:01 and 5:15. And when I turn off airplane mode, ping.
Yep.
Good morning, brother.
Yeah, I checked, and it's like 119 people. And it's people in recovery. It's people from my childhood. It's people over in Bend, my buddies out there. You know, they're not in recovery, but they're still my buddies. You know, I'm the one with the problem. They probably do too, but I don't tell them that. That's not my place. You know, it's, I don't know. My life today is okay. I'm content, and I've never been content before, like ever. It's been about 8.5 years now sober, and the things that have happened that have shaped my recovery, like going through the hard stuff, you know, in my early recovery, has shaped my recovery now to where I can help others. You know, I can help somebody that has lost a family member, lost a baby, you know, stuff like that. And that's the blessings in those. You know, that's, I've helped the same guy. His name's Kelly K from Tillamook. He lost a baby. He came up to me and he's like, how'd you do it? I'm like, dude, you're going to resent people in the rooms that have kids And I go, you probably resent me for having Connor. And he's like, how'd you know that? And I was like, because I felt that same feeling and emotion of like, why are they able to have one and why can't I have one? And now he has a kid. And then his brother overdosed and died here not too long ago. And I was able to start texting him again because he went back out for a while. And he was a guy I looked up to early in recovery, and he went back out, and now he's back in, and I text him every day, and, you know, I was able to help him, you know, through his brother thing too. You know, it's crazy. Like all the people, the more people the older you get, the more people you see die. That's just how it is. You know, my dad told me that when I was young. The older you get, the more people die. That's just a part of life. Get used to it. And I don't think I'll ever get used to that part. I won't, because people have a special place in my heart. And it's hard to get through, you know. I have one grandma left, and she's like 93. She's still driving. I don't know. I have a resentment against the DMV, I guess, you know, now. It's like, why would you let her drive? But she's okay. She only goes to Fred Meyer's and back. But
is she in Tillamook?
Yeah, she's
It's that Tillamook air. It's that cow.
Yeah.
It's all the cow air.
I guess, you know, and it's beautiful to watch, you know, like she's 93 and she's survived with a quarter of a kidney for I don't know how many years. I just don't get it. Like, I hope and pray that I can actually have a life like that, you know, and she's went through a lot of heartbreak and stuff too, you know, and, you know, I get to see these things now, because before I would just been loaded and I wouldn't want to come around. You know, I would have been too embarrassed, like, oh, I'm too fucked up to go, you know, and I did that a lot, you know, I'm just, nope, not going, you know, but I get to do these things, you know, and, you know, I spoke at my brother's funeral. We had to postpone it because of COVID, and we finally ended up having it, and Jacqueline got COVID. And she had a resentment over that too. But it was a good service. You know, I got to sit there and, you know, say my piece, you know, crack jokes like, hey, Connor looks like my brother. Cassius looks like me. I don't know what Jeffrey and Jacqueline were doing, you know, back in 2016. You can ask her, you can't ask him now, you know, but cracking jokes, breaking the ice with people, you know, and that's a gift I have, I guess, is to make people laugh.
You definitely do have that.
Or I can scare the shit out of you, you know, like Doug, like when he walked in.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't there for his first meeting, but I got a text saying, hey, this guy shook the room. And we went to Cheers that night, and I met him. I was like, he's yellow. I know that guy. Like,
this is Doug. This is the infamous Doug.
I'm like, are you Doug? And he's like, yes.
Shout out to Doug.
Yes. And, you know, I tell this to a lot of people, and people think it's rude sometimes. And other people, you know, take it what it is. It's like, I looked him straight in the face, and I was like, I hope your life is so fucked up that you actually listen to somebody in here, because otherwise you're going to fucking die. The doctor told you that, you know? And
it's truth.
He told me, he's like, yeah, I went home super pissed off. And then about a week later, he asked me to sponsor him, and I'm still a sponsor, and it's awesome. I was driving here, and I was like, well, going to do the podcast. And he's like, I can't wait. So yeah, it's, this podcast that you're doing, thank you so much. It's a good service, you know.
And I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your story. I know your story is going to help a lot of people. I really resonated with the Salvation Army. I'll probably put a link in the show notes so that if someone needs help, they can reach out there that doesn't have insurance. It's a great resource.
They shut the one down here in Portland. But there are still, I think there's one in Seattle still, and California.
Maybe someone from another state.
Yeah,
I mean,
wherever.
We have listeners in Germany already.
Awesome. That's sweet.
I wrote some notes down. What a blessing for you to be sober for your parents? You know, that could have been completely different, losing him, and if you were fucked up and going through all of that.
People were really worried about me. Like, they're like, you're going to relapse. And I'm like, dude, my parents are not burying another kid. Do not worry about me. Like, I'm just digging in deeper. You know, that I've been taught when hard shit happens, you trudge through it and you're better on the other side of it.
100%.
And, you know, that Melissa back in Tillamook, she talked about that all the time. You know, give yourself some grace and get through this hard shit, and you'll be able to help somebody on the other side. So that's just little tidbits come in, you know, from people, you know, that you meet, and it's crazy.
That brings us into our last question for you. Say there's someone new, someone struggling. How about some advice for someone who's considering getting sober, just getting into the rooms that found this podcast?
When you get into the rooms, don't look for the differences, because there's going to be a lot of differences in there. Look for the similarities, and you'll hear this many times in the rooms. Look for the similarities, not the differences. It sounds so cliche, but it's true, because I can find so many differences in the rooms still, you know. And as a newcomer, you know, you come in, get a sponsor. Don't be afraid to ask somebody. You know, it feels like your first date. It did for me, you know, and it's still like, I had my sponsor die not too long ago, sober, and asking the new guy, Marv, who is an absolute stud, felt like a first date.
I love Marv.
Yes.
Great story too. I need you to ask him to come in here.
I will
too, by the way.
But no, it's like, get a sponsor, work the steps with your sponsor, go to meetings. You know, I was told this, that people that don't go to meetings don't get to see what happens to the person that doesn't go to meetings. So you can chew on that for a little bit.
Truth.
Yes.
That's why I go to meetings.
Right. Like, I like going to meetings, you know. If you're even court ordered, go in there and just try this thing out. Because if you're thinking about getting sober, more than likely you have a problem. Because you've thought about it a little bit. You've been like, ooh, I might have a problem. Just give it a chance, and your life will get different. Because I'm not going to tell you your life's going to get better, because I've seen a lot of people come into the program and it's rough for a little bit, but it gets different, you know, and eventually they get on the other side of stuff. You know, you got to go through those amends. You got to go through the hard stuff. And that's where, you know, they say the promises in one of the programs, and I thought they were bullshit, and they've all came true. Like, all of them for me.
Not bullshit for you.
And
you're a walking promise.
You know, it's
sure.
Just do the program as suggested. You know, it's it'll save your life. Because I know if I relapse, I don't know if I will make it back.
Teddy, thank you so much for coming in, sharing your story. It's late. It's after 10 now. It's been a great share. I love meeting with you and sharing this experience with you.
Well, I'll be texting you about 5.
All right. 7 hours from now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll drive home, go to bed, wake up, do it all over again. That's what it is. You know,
that's it.
My sponsee that I'm working with, he's like, dude, you need to go to bed. And I'm like, I'm going to do a podcast. I'm a different kind of animal than you, and be ready to work tomorrow, because we got a lot of shit to do.
That's it. Love you, buddy.
Love you too.
Thanks for listening to the Jaywalkers Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also join us on YouTube or Facebook for some bonus videos and pictures. Thanks again for tuning in.